We are looking at a turbulent time in our lives. And in my long 54 years, I've seen some atrocities in Bosnia Herzegovina, uh, Iraq, 1990, the Yugoslav wars, Ecuador, Syria, 2011, the Arab Springs. But what is going on in Israel currently is one of the worst atrocities I've ever experienced. And due to the fact that this is probably the only time in my lifetime where a standing military is basically at war with a civilian population, where they cannot legally or technically defend themselves. And what is currently happening is a slaughter, wholesale slaughter, backed by the United States government of Palestinians who happen to be placed in areas by the Israeli government in large numbers and being shelled to death. Recent times, we are basically seeing worse and worse videos come out since the 8 months of the October 7th Hamas attack on the Jericho Wall in Israel, where over 1,000 Israelis have been killed. There's been a lot of propaganda since then on both sides, but the propaganda by Israel basically is what's being played in the American TV, especially with the 50 beheaded babies and the rapes of the women and stuff. But there have been atrocities by Hamas. Now, that shouldn't be given a green light to slaughter every Palestinian in Israel. But as of right now, with the numbers provided, 38,000 Palestinians are dead, 83,000 approximately are wounded, and 2 million forcibly displaced. Currently, right now, on the border of Rafah, Egypt and Israel, 1.5 million Palestinians are waiting to basically make it across in makeshift homes and tents in Egypt, or in makeshift tents in areas of Rafah. But if they stay there, they're basically having a target painted on their back. Now, I have seen people defend this, people within the government, like Nikki Haley, who went to Israel yesterday and basically wrote on the bombs, American bombs, that given to Israel, finish them. Finish them. Representatives like Anthony Blinken, Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, and one of the worst ones of all, Brian Mast, who are basically just given a green light to anything that Israel will do. And they're using the excuse that they have to wipe out Hamas. What they're not realizing, but they are realizing, is that innocent civilians are being killed. But because they happen to be Muslim or Arab, they share no commonality or no humanity with these evangelical or Christians and evangelical Zionists. And this is the problem. It could be a racial problem, it could be a religious problem, or a mixture of both. But it's a problem. And it's a problem of ideology. And I think the deeper meaning of this one-sided war is basically the loss of their humanity in replacement of ideology. And when you succumb to an ideology, when you allow for a human construct to basically neglect the human condition within you, because we are human beings, even the Israeli Zionists partaking in these crimes. They're human beings. They're just victims of ideology. How do we go about saving them from themselves and from the victims who are the Palestinians? Do we basically start doing the same thing to the Israelis? Does that solve the problem? No. Now, I'm not saying the Palestinians shouldn't defend themselves at the same time. My message to you would be to say, defend yourselves with honor and integrity. And if you need to kill the occupier and the ones who are trying to kill you, well, then you have to do that. But what I'm also going to say is basically at near the end of the video, where we need to engage our humanity and not to become the enemy. And I got into a conversation with a person I highly respect, who's written a book. And he basically was arguing that the Israelis need to do everything they can to ensure that Hamas doesn't exist anymore. And I asked him, well, how many Palestinians need to die in order to do this? Well, he says it's not as easy as it's black and white. And I said, well, no, not really, but it is. Do you need to kill everybody involved? He goes, well, I wish I could say that to be true, but no, it's not as easy as, say, what's going on between Pakistan and India. But yet they had to make the decision of either, killing the enemy or allowing it to exist in order to attack again. I said, okay, I'll make it simple. If someone steals from you, do you in turn have to become a thief? I got no response. What I mean by this is simple. If you're oppressor, if you're a victim of an oppressor, it doesn't mean that you in turn have to be just as cold and soulless as the oppressor. How you win over that person is kindness and mercy when that person is, say, a hostage or somebody in the street. Not on the battlefield, of course, because you're fighting for your lives. However, if you're a Palestinian resistance or a protester, if you happen to see a Jewish Zionist in the street, or if you're a Palestinian resistance fighter and you capture an Israeli IDF soldier, how you win them over, how you want them to see you as a human being and not as the enemy. Well, you have to ensure that you employ goodness and mercy. And that's how you win them over. And later on, I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But let's get to the news. Israel war in Gaza live as tent cities attacked as tanks roll into Rafah. Israeli forces shelled a tent camp in a designated safe zone west of Rafah, killed at least 21 people, including 13 women and girls. The latest mass killing of Palestinians. United Nations Security Council convened an emergency meeting over Israel's ground invasion in Rafah as Spain, Ireland, and Norway formally recognized state of Palestine. Get more countries on board to basically say, we got to stop this. As global condemnation continues to grow, and it does, this is actually a good thing. Not a good thing if you're, a Zionist or you're an American congressman in the back pockets of AIPAC. It's not good for you because you're a propagandist. Let me just say this, take a break from the news. If you're Nikki Haley, I can assure you Nikki Haley is basically saying these things because she's getting paid. If she wasn't getting paid by AIPAC, or Brian Mast wasn't getting paid by AIPAC, or Lindsey Graham, or Steny Hoyer, who's the highest paid U.S. congressman by AIPAC, you're basically not going to say anything. You might even go the other way. You might become a human being. But because you're promised money, filthy lucre money, I'm atheist, I'm not Christian. You abandoned your humanity. So Nikki Haley is only saying this because she's getting money. She would never say this if she wasn't getting paid by AIPAC. She wouldn't do the things that she's doing if they weren't paid by AIPAC. But because they get $500,000, hell, that's good money right there. I'll say whatever you want me to say. So if any one of you, Brian Mast, Lindsey Graham, want to take up the challenge and prove me wrong that you would still say these things without getting paid, I dare you. I dare you. And then what you should do is basically take the AIPAC money and actually give it back to AIPAC. Or take the AIPAC money and give it to the constituents in which you serve, allegedly. But who am I kidding? You're a bunch of sellouts, whores, and prostitutes that will say and do anything for money. And you prove it time and time again. The United Nations said it's received about 170 trucks of humanitarian aid over the past 3 weeks, a drop in the ocean from the 500 trucks needed each day. Israel's incursion, launched in early May, has forced 1 million people to flee Rafah, most of whom have already been displaced several times by Israel's bloody war in Gaza. Now, again, we're seeing an extension of this. Now, little by little, Israel will continue to expand its borders, which is the whole goal of the Greater Israel Project. Oh, did you not? And, a lot of people say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. But if you look at the project itself, it makes a lot of sense to what you're seeing in the current day period. War with Iraq to fragment it, making sure that Egypt stays as an ally, making sure that Syria is decapitulated. I mean, look what's happening, right? Now, as currently, we're seeing probably one of the worst periods of the war regarding the bombing of the Rafah refugee camp, which killed so many women and children. And this actually caused a lot of stir and outrage. But again, Israel doesn't care. But the prime minister, for the first time, basically said, we made a mistake. Hey, listen, it's a step. The guy belongs at The Hague, but, it's neither here nor there. But now we have a bigger problem because of a recent shooting in Egypt. And now they might be getting involved. And this is a problem because if they become involved, it could sure well be a wider regional war that could involve Syria and Lebanon, maybe, and escalate the conflict, which is what Israel wants anyway. So that Egypt gets involved. And if that's the case, we might see a return of the 6-day war. When will Lebanon, when will Syria strike back, and when will Iran strike? I don't think they will, unless they're provoked. They tried that with Lebanon, but failed. And I don't think the Israelis can afford to extend beyond the borders because there's a split in the White House that basically wants the end of this conflict because it's hurting the Biden administration. And I think it's basically given them no shot to win in November. But are the conservatives any more beneficial to hegemony in the region? No. When you have someone like Nikki Haley, who is signing right now missiles and bombs, saying finish them on these missiles and bombs, what does that tell you? And people like Tom Cotton and Brian Mast, Lindsey Graham, do I need to go forward? We're a nation of sellouts. And you people have the nerve to think that voting your way out is the answer. Do not vote. And stop looking at each other as if you are the enemy. Stop looking at each other like you are left and right. We are part of the human species. Much higher elevated being than any ideology which basically demeans our worth, doesn't elevate it. The International Criminal Court, according to the latest reports, an Israeli spy chief had threatened the International Criminal Court's prosecutor Eastern Basunda to drop Palestinian investigations. So let's read from The Guardian. The head of the Mossad, Israel's foreign intelligence agency, allegedly threatened the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in a series of secret meetings in which he tried to pressure her into abandoning a war crimes investigation. Now, they know it in their heart, in their mind. But we need to touch these people. Now, I'm not saying here that we should be friends with the Israeli government and the military. I think we should forcibly expel these people, especially out of the United States Congress, and label the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee as a foreign agency led by the Department of Justice. Seems like a pipe dream at this point. But if we can get enough people to basically stop this persuasion, this more morbid persuasion of American congressmen with millions of dollars, and we can get these sellouts like Brian Mast, Lindsey Graham, and Anthony Blinken, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump to stop supporting this genocide, then maybe we can get some headway. But that's going to come up to us, the people. Yossi Cohen's covert contacts with the International Criminal Courts, then prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, took place in the years leading up to her decision to open a formal investigation into alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in occupied Palestinian territories. Now, you've heard me say many times that Israel is not part of the Rome Statutes. This is true. But they did formally recognize Palestine as a non-state co-signer of the Rome Statutes in 2016, I believe. And this is why they can investigate what's going on in Palestine. That investigation, launched in 2021, culminated last week when Bensouda's successor, Karim Khan, announced that he was seeking an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu over the country's conduct of its war in Gaza. The prosecutor's decision to apply the International Criminal Court's pretrial chamber to arrest warrant for Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, alongside Hamas leaders, in an outcome Israel's military and political establishment has long feared. And as well, they should be fearful, because Netanyahu is a mass murderer, and so is Yoav Gallant. However, there's another surprising event to this. The Israeli reservists have basically put out a video condemning Yoav Gallant, asking him to step down, and that they will only listen to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. If this is the case, they say that they will go to war against Yoav Gallant and anybody that goes with him. Interesting times we live in, just so that he could keep Gaza away from the Palestinians. So I say to you, to the Palestinian who may be watching this, defend yourselves. Defend with honor, defend with grace, and defend with dignity. It's the only thing you have left. But I say unto you, do not be like your enemies, and instead do as Psalms 23 states. Clearly, surely, goodness and mercy will be with me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The meaning behind this is allegorical, for me anyway. Like I said, I'm an atheist. Don't believe in the supernatural when it comes to monotheism, the later ones anyway. But when I look at that scripture, it basically says this: that everybody on the face of this earth, no matter who it is, even to the Zionist, because he is a human being, he or she, but they're besieged by ideology, which blinds their humanity, which is the reason why they're acting this way. But if you somehow capture a Israeli soldier or meet a Zionist in the streets, do not resort to how they would act. Instead, show them kindness and mercy in the hopes of showing them how it is to be human and how to perceive the Palestinian not as the enemy, but as the human being. And when you dwell in the house of the Lord, it's not some place in heaven as I believe, but the kingdom of God is within you. And that is love, the eternal essence of love, which makes up every fiber of our mind or spirit, whatever you want to call it. That we all have the choice to do good and evil. A beautiful thing, free will. And my message to you, the Arab, Palestinian, the Syrian, the Lebanese, the Iraqi, the Afghani, the Libyan, to show kindness and mercy to your enemies in the hopes of returning them back to the fold of humanity so that we could shine a light into a dark world where we could live in peace and hegemony. For our governments have failed us, and we are failing ourselves. We don't have to fail ourselves for long. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Adam Fitzgerald. See you in the next video, everybody.